back to the interviews of the candidates for the Leavenworth City Commission in the upcoming primary election. The 8th candidate is Bill Johnson, Jr. Bill will be a familiar face to many of you. Bill served on the City Commission in the past and has been a lifelong resident, I believe, or at least as long as I've been around.
That's correct.
A resident of the City of Leavenworth. Bill is a architect, an engineer, and works in the city of Kansas City, or where do you work, Bill?
In Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Sure.
And, of course, works around the City of Leavenworth as well. Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you going to put your experience in the field of architecture to work if you're elected?
Well, I believe I agree with many of the things I've heard up till now. I disagree with a few of them, but one of the things is diversity on the board. I think that the 2.5 years I spent on the board, we were at our best when we were disagreeing, as long as it was done politely. I think what I bring in that respect is an experience in construction, in contracts, in dealing with contractors, and the city does quite a bit of that. I think that is one thing that is necessary to understand what the issues are, to challenge them in some cases, and to explain them in others. Is my 4 minutes started here?
Okay.
Okay.
So are you.
All right. I believe that the role of government is in local government, is to maintain, promote the lifestyle, the quality of life of the city. And this, of course, includes, as a basic, all of the infrastructure, the sewers, the streets, police, the fire, and the parks. And I think that's essential, that's basic, and that has to be addressed without question. Beyond that, I think that the city needs to be a partner in the improvement of the quality of life in our city. The downtown district, to me, is extremely important for several reasons. One is that most of the businesses downtown are locally owned, and they're competing with a lot of franchise businesses, and I think that they can use some help in competing on a level table. We have a tremendous history. The downtown district is our identity. It's what we think of ourselves, it's what we rally around. I believe that the importance of the downtown is paramount. We have over, I think at one time I mentioned over 30 nationally recognized names associated with this town. And if we can capitalize on that, and we haven't really done it yet, I think that can bring visitors into the town.
You're speaking names like Fred Harvey.
Fred Harvey, Colin Powell, Abraham Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth, 30 of them. There's 30. We can draw people in on the sales tax, they will spend money mostly with our local businesses because they're visiting the town for historical reasons. The sales tax can help control the property tax. I'm an opponent of property tax, but it's there to stay. I realize that, but I feel that it's arbitrary and a very unfair tax because it has nothing to do with the ability to pay. It's there for, it's not going to go away, but I think we can control it and perhaps through sales tax let other people, visitors, come in and pay that sales tax and help us out. I think that's one important issue. I have some thoughts on the aquatic center. I'm sorry it's called an aquatic center, the swimming pool complex. I do disagree that it should be put back at Woolman Park. Woolman Park was built probably, it's older than I am, so it's probably about 70 years old. It was built at a time when we probably had a population of about 18,000 people. And at that time, because of segregation, there was a pool up north. So we had 2 pools, public pools, to serve about 18,000 people. We're a city now of over 38,000. We have to build a pool that would accommodate our population 10, 15, 20 years from now, so we could be up to 45, 50,000 people. It doesn't fit there.
So you'd be in favor of a replacement facility that would be a larger scale at a different location.
That's correct. If I can expand on that.
Expand on that if you want to.
I'd like to. First of all, I feel like we should not hire a consultant right now to design one. I believe that the public has spoken. They do not want it at Ray Miller Park. They do not want it at the size it is. But I would suggest that we establish, through conversation with the public and with among commissioners, set a budget, locate it, or propose to locate it in the northeast area at Sportsman Field. The city already owns that property. If the public votes that, they'll accept that at that price. We then design it. Perhaps we can design it for the full baggage that we had, but bid only the basics, and have planned for the future the other trimmings that we could have. At the same time, I think I'd like to see Woolman Park turned into a passive park, not lose it as a park, but the pool could be turned into a sand volleyball court. The shower house could be turned into a shelter, add toilets there, and let it be a passive park with walking paths, rollerblading, and keep it as a park, but not, it's in a neighborhood, and to serve the 3 or 4 times as many people as it did when it was originally built would be offensive, I think, to the neighborhood.
Bill, I want to thank you for your views. Thank you for being here to tell us why you should be elected as commissioner.
Thank you.
The next guest today will be Harold Tab Hunter, also a familiar face to the viewers. Mr. Hunter is currently a city commissioner. He is of course, resident of the city. He has 3 daughters and stepson and 3 grandchildren? Or
Yes, sir, 3.
3 grandchildren. And he's currently serving the end of his first term, seeking the second term on the commission. Mr. Hunter's background is that he's in organizational management. Is that correct? Tab, tell us what it is that you want to keep doing on the city commission.
Sir, I'm seeking re-election as a continuing opportunity to remain an advocate for the citizens of the city, to provide leadership related to the expenditure of public funds and associated programs, and to enhance citywide communications and responsiveness to all citizens. I will continue to work for planned growth within the city, which can include housing development, businesses, and environmentally safe light industry. This growth must include strengthening current downtown businesses while attempting to diversify the economic base, with recruitment of new stores for a balanced retail mix for the community. Historic preservation is also a vital part of this vision, in that preservation stabilizes or even improves property values, promotes sound environmental stewardship, attracts tourists, which in turn will benefit local businesses. Growth in any or all these sectors will in turn increase the tax base of the city, continue funding long delayed but ongoing projected infrastructure improvements. This should ensure for all that the community remains a progressive place to live and work. I offer the knowledge and experience needed for the position and the willingness to do the job. That experience brings with it my understanding of the city's expectations for city services, amenities, and growth as it relates to their needs, in conjunction with community goals and objectives. Obtaining those community objectives must be tempered with fiscal responsibility as to ensure the optimal return of value for every public penny spent. Citizens have the spirit and will to strive for the common good of all, provided they have the appropriate information related to public endeavors and actions. I will continue to do my utmost to provide that information and entertain opposing views and find solutions to the complicated issues facing Leavenworth.
Tab, you mentioned planned growth and your introduction. What do you see as the future path of growth in the city of Leavenworth?
Sir, about the moment I figure the city can go is to the south and southwest. In that endeavor, we voluntarily annexed 112 acres south of Michael's Road down there. Sewers for housing development down there run up parallel that to east of County Road 5, and hopefully the developer and the city can get together on plugging that area into the sewers that the developer put in.
What about the Eisenhower Road project? How important is that to the long-term growth?
Well, long-term growth, I believe it is. But one of the things that's facing the city is if that area is annexed, I think the road will be built. We have on the plans or projects right now to extend part of that, but not all of it. But the city will probably need to annex that and extend sewers out from, say, 10th Street all the way out to County Road 5, and then run it down County Road 5 and hook up to it.
All right. Another thing you mentioned here was continue to support the downtown redevelopment. Can you be more specific about what the city's role ought to be in that regard?
Well, I think, and the city does take an active role into helping the chamber and also Main Street define the program that we use to get businesses in down there. It is updated through the Main Street program, which is developed by LAD to put things on the internet. We do get people coming and look, but in some cases they want a larger business downtown in existing buildings.
So you think the city ought to spend its own funds to assist the downtown redevelopment?
No, sir, I don't. I think we need the businesses down there to buy in to whatever monies. I think the city should put in some monies, i.e. with a streetscape, to help develop downtown. We need the businesses to buy in to some degree, to some level, to help the city do that, promote the downtown area.
Tad, thank you very much for your thoughts and your views of what the city ought to be doing. Appreciate you being with us. Our next guest is also a city commissioner, in fact, Mayor Mayor Ken Bauer. Ken married to Bobby, has 3 adult children, all of them still claim him, I understand. Ken, thank you for being with us today. Those of you who are familiar with Ken know that he is an employee of Hallmark Cards. He works in Kansas City, but still carries out his duties as a commissioner and mayor. And apparently he's glutton for punishment because he wants to run for re-election. So tell us what it is that's important to you, Ken, that gives you some incentive to run.
Well, John, thank you for hosting the forum. And let me say that it's been a real pleasure serving the citizens of Leavenworth for the last 4 years. I think that I have hoped to make some accomplishments in the past, and I've jotted down a few notes to let folks know. I think some of the things that we've accomplished since I've been on the commission. Some of them reflect public safety. We've heard some of the other candidates talk about public safety. I've very much been committed to that. The new fire stations, additional police and fire personnel. We, in the last budget, just hired 2 new firefighters and 2 dispatchers for the fire folks, and also continued with the police safety grant, which has been very important to the city. Infrastructure has also been mentioned. Infrastructure is very important. We've done several major roads, sidewalk programs, and a lot of sewer work in the past 4 years. And we're also working towards improvements to our stormwater system. Some of us have touched upon economic development and broadening of the tax base. Certainly that's a very important part. Working for the city, I have supported the use of industrial revenue bonds for various businesses to expand, and also supported limited tax rebates on older sections of the city. And the City Commission continually works with Leavenworth Area Development to bring new business opportunities into the city of Leavenworth. I'm a strong proponent of neighborhood improvements. Some of the things we've done in the past 4 years was to add additional street lighting in Northeast Leavenworth. I supported and advocated for the basic property maintenance code. I think that's been good for the city. We've been able to help some folks clean up some of their properties. And another important thing is I advocated for becoming a local certified government for historic preservation, and that gives us more local control on historic preservation. We've done some nice quality of life initiatives in the city. We put some new playground equipment in at Cody Park and at Stubby Park. We've also finished the project up in the Northeast, and that's Bob Doherty Park. That was funded exclusively by the city at large. And also I should mention the improvements at an enhancement at Union Park. That's a nice little park in that's Spruce and Fifth Avenue, which kind of fix it up to be more historically correct for that part of the city. One of the other things that I don't think too many of the other candidates have touched upon, and that's very important to me, and that's public-private partnerships. We've done some things with the city. Some of them include the Youth Achievement Center, worked with Habitat for Humanity. We're just going to be opening that house for Kim in probably in about a week. I think she's going to move in there. We did a wonderful thing, I think, with Historic Wayside Tourism. We partnered with Main Street and Fort Leavenworth to help us do that, and also some of the museums, Richard Allen Cultural Center, the Parker Carousel Project, and the Fred Harvey House. So those are real important to help bring in tourists. Historic tourism is very important, I think, as a way to draw folks into the city, as well as to enhance things for our own citizens. So those are just a few accomplishments that I've jotted down. I'd like to tell folks that I think that my priorities for running for a city commission again are pretty much the same as when I originally threw my hat in the ring 4 years ago. These are the things that I said then, and these are the things I would like to say again. Number one, I would like to continue to maintain superior city services for the lowest possible property tax. There isn't a candidate one, I think, that advocates for raising taxes, but certainly sometimes that's necessary if we're going to move forward. I would support and continue to support progressive economic development and growth and sound fiscal management. And certainly I have a very strong commitment to a strong downtown, strong neighborhoods, and historic preservation. So my vision for the future includes the following. Continue to maintain infrastructure and do further improvements, to work cooperatively with other community groups, the school district, and I'm out of time, but I have a few others.
Well, I've got one more minute.
Okay, all right. I'd like to see us develop the Southwest Park, put in some additional soccer fields. I also have a vision for an outdoor swimming facility, which meets the needs of our community. Obviously, what we proposed earlier did not, and that's fine, but we need to work together as a community to develop that. Adaptive reuses of historic buildings at the VA, and certainly I support the streetscape improvements for downtown.
That's full agenda.
Yes.
Let me ask you a little bit about tax revenue.
Okay.
One of the things facing state government, and I assume it's affecting city government too, is that with economic downturn, sales tax revenues aren't what were necessarily projected. I assume that that's going to happen in the city of Leavenworth, what's happening in the city of Kansas. Do you know?
I don't know that for a fact. It seems like we've had, at least the latest projections that I've seen, is that we've done quite well in the city of Leavenworth maintaining the sales tax base. Inevitably, if the economy does go further into a recession-type mode, then that will be a concern, obviously, and we'll have to scrutinize those revenue sources and make wise decisions. If the revenue stream isn't there, certainly projects that we'd like to do, we'll just have to put on the back burner.
What percentage of the operating budget of the city of Leavenworth is dependent upon sales tax?
I do not know that off the top of my head, but the 1 cent sales tax that funds the CIP is a significant portion of the budget for capital improvements. And that's an ongoing, that tax was voted for the library and the community center, and that revenue stream supports maintenance at the community center as well as other improvements. So it's a very important revenue stream is the sales tax, and certainly a lot better tax than the property tax.
Again, thank you very much.
John, appreciate your time.
Appreciate you participating.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is Todd Evans. Mr. Abbott, we recognize recently on the ballot here in the city of Leavenworth. I think running for the legislature. Is that right, Todd?
Yeah, I'm from the 40th district.
Todd has 2 children. He's a businessman and has been in the cab business for 16 years here in the city of Leavenworth. He's a graduate of the Leavenworth High School?
No, GED.
Okay. Todd's expressed an interest in being on the city commission. Todd, would you enlighten the voters why they should vote for you?
Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Leavenworth, and when I was younger, everything was taken care of, and I appreciated that, and now I'm getting a little older. I have some free time. I'd like to help out and help take care of some of the things that go on in this town. I'm pretty happy with most of it. I would like to see it be a little more conservative, a little less fluff, but I just want to try and provide a conservative viewpoint from a younger person. I'm one of the younger people that are running.
How old are you?
36. And I just want to help out and like this town.
When you say you're conservative, what implication does that have for infrastructure spending?
Well, I think all the discretionary money or the most of the discretionary money that we have should go to infrastructure. Fire and streets and police and things of that nature, and a little less on welcome signs and welcome centers, whatnot.
Well, wouldn't you? I guess my conception of infrastructure would be that the first tax dollar goes to pay for sewers and streets and public safety, and not necessarily discretionary money. Do you see it that way?
Yes.
What do you think about governmental cooperation? Certainly, we've got an example of that in the project that was just completed, that is the new judicial center, combining the police department, sheriff's department, jails, and courts. What other examples of that kind of cooperation did you foresee?
Well, I couldn't think of any off the top of my head, but I am real pleased with the Justice Center. It's, a money-saving thing for all concerned.
You see that efforts like that might be a step toward combining existing governmental entities, for example, City of Lansing, City of Leavenworth?
I don't know if we would necessarily need to, make one or the other go away to make one government, but I wouldn't have a problem with the two governments working together.
You're probably aware that the City of Lansing requested authority to come into the Channel 2 production, and they now sit on the Channel 2 advisory board because they want to utilize those same facilities since we're all on the same cable channel. You foresee that being an instrument of good government?
Oh, yeah. Lansing gets to be on the cable channel. They've given the City of Leavenworth a little bit of money for it. They get their stuff out, and we get a little help financially.
What do you think about the city's commitment to Channel 2? Right now, the city doesn't spend a whole lot of money on Channel 2. We've got a couple of cameras, and people work part-time to run those cameras. Do you think it ought to be a bigger enterprise?
At least big enough to get the sound right.
Well, I think everybody will agree with you on that point. That seems to be the biggest problem. Well, Todd, I appreciate your being with us today, and if you're elected, good luck to you.
Thank you.
The next candidate is Michael Maurer. Mike is a resident of the City of Leavenworth, and he's in the physical therapy business. And you graduated of Leavenworth High School?
Yes, sir. I'm done already.
Well, I won't cut you off there.
I'm a graduate of Leavenworth High School, 1984.
Right. And you've been in business here in Leavenworth for how long now?
Going on 6 years.
All right. What do you think qualifies you to be a commissioner?
Well, I'm from here, which helps. I know a lot about the city, born here. Being a businessman, I have an idea of how things run somewhat, and budgets and expenditures, and trying to stay within budgets in order not to spend too much money, and on prioritizing what is needed and what is not needed. My major concern is, like a lot of the people who have spoken here today, is our city is an older city. It continues to grow, and our infrastructure is a very important thing that we continue to foster. And basically, one of the main problems that we're having is where we get the tax money for that infrastructure. And one of my ideas, and what I think we should really work upon, is trying to get as many businesses in here as we possibly can in order to keep the discretionary income that our citizens are spending in Kansas City and Lawrence in our own town. That way the taxes that can come from that discretionary income can remain here instead of being spent for the infrastructures of other cities. And I think we need to really foster that as much as we possibly can. All my friends from high school, they always say, "Why do you live in Leavenworth? There's nothing there." They've always said that. And the census of Leavenworth in 1995, I read on the internet, was 42,000 people. And other towns around that I've seen or have lived in that are that size have a lot more stuff, for lack of a better term. And I think we need more of that stuff so that people can spend their money on that stuff here. And then the taxes that are generated from that money can be used for the infrastructure and for the amenities that the population actually wants. I mean, such as the pool. I mean, it's a very important thing. The pool, they're going to have to close. It just simply is unsafe. At this time, I've spoken with them about that, with Pam and with who is the pool director, Pam Simpson. I've spoken with her about that, and that's, it's no longer safe. So we have to come up with something, and if we don't provide recreation for our children, they will find some type of recreation themselves, which is not the type of thing we will probably want to happen. The recreation they find may not be something that pleases us, so it's an important thing. So I feel that the idea and the problem everyone knows. We have to continue to grow our infrastructure. We have to have things for our children to do. But where we get that money, it's very important that we get that money by improving and increasing the businesses in this town. The downtown area is also a very important area that can be worked upon. We're the oldest city in the state, and we need to foster that, being the oldest city in the state. Charleston, actually not Charleston, but a little town outside of St. Louis. Can't remember the name of it.
St. Charles.
St. Charles has a lovely downtown, beautiful. Done a great job with that. Have a lot of businesses there. Get a lot of people coming there to that town. That type of situation could also occur in Leavenworth, where we have that type of people coming to see our downtown, spending their money here, and our own citizens spending their money here. We have too many of our own citizens that have to go outside of our city to spend their discretionary income, and businesses that have to get what they need to run their business from outside our city, and needs to be gotten here. And that way that money can be spent here, and the taxes generated from it can be used for what we need to continue to grow as a city.
You mentioned the downtown area, and I just want to know what you think the role of the city ought to be in redevelopment of the downtown, or development of an industrial park, or anything like that has the prospect of commercial development.
Well, the role of the city should not be to throw up obstacles, which may be a rumor, but is something that almost every one of my patients that I see, and I see a great number of patients, about 130 patient visits a week, that they all say, well, this thing wanted to come in, but the city wouldn't let them. Or this thing wanted to happen here, but the city wouldn't let them. Whatever these obstacles or these perceived obstacles are, they need to be removed.
You think there's credence to that?
I think there may be. I know a rumor, and I'm not sure if it's positive that it's true or not, that Applebee's, it took them 4 attempts to come into our town. If that's true, why is that? In a town of our size, we are right at the cusp between what a market, when someone looks at the market here, they say, well, it's a possibility, we'll look at it, but they're not going to press and continue to work towards doing something in our town if there are obstacles in the way. We have to facilitate those businesses. We have to help them, not to the point where it's a detriment, or not to the point where we're going to give away the house in order to help get it better. But we do have to facilitate those businesses. There has to be a reason why other towns of our size have all that stuff, and we don't. We're older than them, so shouldn't we be ahead of them? It seems like that makes sense, common sense to me, which is what I'd like to bring to the City Commission, is a little common sense. I'm a younger guy, and probably would be considered naive by a lot of these older guys, but I think common sense tells me that for some reason we aren't in the position that the other cities our size are, and we need to find out why and fix it.
All right, and do you think the City Commission ought to take a proactive role in doing so?
I believe the City Commission should set the tone. Should definitely set the tone. Whether or not it should get directly involved in assisting, per se, certain businesses, I think that's not equal. It has to be equal. All things should be equal. Everyone should be assisted the same. But it should definitely not throw up obstacles. It should facilitate and help, not necessarily make it more difficult for businesses to do what they would like to do in our town.
Mike, thank you very much for your views. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Our final candidate today is John Lewis. Mr. Lewis has given me some notes here that I really honestly have a little trouble deciphering. John, you may have to help me. Currently, John is the program manager at Cubic, and he does have a degree from Northern Michigan University. What field is that in, John?
That was in education.
All right. Tell us a little bit more about your background, if you would, and why you want to be a city commissioner.
Well, really, one of the reasons that I want to be a city commissioner is because I think that Leavenworth is right on the cusp of really moving up to the next level. There's really 4 questions that I think that the citizens of Leavenworth ought to consider when they go to the polling booth. The first one is, do you believe that Leavenworth is going to change in the next 4 years? The second is, do you want to ensure that the city government and the administration is held accountable to the tasks that they've been asked to do by the citizens? Third, do you want the citizens of Leavenworth involved in the decision process? And fourth, do you want to have the leadership in place to accomplish the above? And if the answer to that is yes, then I ask that when you go in the polling booth that you pull for my name, John Lewis. I think I do have some unique skills that can contribute to answering these questions. I do have a lot of formal background in strategic planning, and I've done this in business, and I think it's a viable way to accomplish what we have to do to meet those 4 questions. Let me first explain that to you. First and foremost, we should have identified priorities, key economic drivers, and the means that hold people accountable to accomplish those 2 things. The priorities that I would establish first and foremost: improve the infrastructure. Second, provide an exceptional quality of life for our citizens, focused on the elderly and the youth. Third, establish our small town as an all-American city, as the first city of Kansas place we can be proud of. And fourth, balance the budget based on priorities that have been placed into this plan. And last, the most critical part of it is recognize the revenues that it takes to run the city. I think we need to have an active tax awareness and relief solution program, and by that I mean forming of citizen action teams to find viable solutions. Whether that means looking at earnings tax, sales tax, restaurant tax, hotel tax, for those who are coming into our city. But I think we need to explore that by opening up citizen action teams to find viable solutions, not more problems. The other thing that I think is valuable here is that the public have a basic understanding of the baseline revenues to run this city. I would want to have a public budget plan, a plan that's presented to the public, it's open to the public, and it is in fact communicated to the public so they understand what the priorities are. Historical revitalization, I think, is key to economic viability, and I would support pursuing the VA Conference Center, that initiative, building the downtown, and having a revitalization incentive for citizens in this town who own older homes so that they can have an incentive, as well as the businessmen who own the older buildings, so that when people come to visit this town, because we are the first city, they get something back for it. I think we need an active marketing plan for this city. By this, I mean combining the energies of LAD, PAL, the Chamber of Commerce, and Main Street. But more importantly, more than sitting in a meeting that they're represented, to hold them accountable by the strategic planning process. Give them specific targets that they have to hit. And if they don't produce, hold them accountable and ask the question why. I think that another thing that's really important is a reach-back program for our youth and our elderly. I think the youth are the future of the city. I think we should be doing the right things to provide for them activity areas, whether it's soccer fields, basketball areas, formalized development programs to build the youth. That's the future. And to also to accommodate for the elderly. That we are taking care of them, that they do have the means to be active in the community.
John, let me interrupt you for a second here. You've given a very broad brush here to goals and aspirations for our city. One of the things that I like to follow up on is, let's say we want to have as one of our goals the acquisition of the next Hallmark. what role do you think the city ought to actually play in encouraging the business to come here? Should the city's endeavors include tax exemptions, for example, property acquisitions, streets and other utility installations? How far should the city go?
Well, I think first and foremost, you've got to have a plan to get them to even consider coming to Leavenworth. And, you know, there is a science in marketing and how you sell a product. And so I think we have to have incentives that are understood by big business to come here. At the same time, I think that we need to be upfront and not give a pure tax abatement to set the hook. I think the reality ought to be a balance of both. Sell Leavenworth for what it is, a small town, great place to live, with a lot of opportunity. But to get them to come here, I don't think that we should necessarily say tax abatement is the solution that gets them here. I think they need to have a responsibility placed on them to come to this town and be part of this community, to be an active part of it.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate your coming and being a part of our programming here today. This concludes the list of candidates who are running in the primary election for the Leavenworth City Commission. I hope you will join us in our next segment when we will interview candidates for the City Council at Bauer, I think it's District 4, and also the candidates for the Leavenworth Board of Education, USD 453. Thank you for being with us.